Okay, it is 9/9/2024, 9:01 p.m. This is One Eye Jack and the Shells, Death to the Ball, Requiem in E minor, classic there. And we have about 33, the Rexit number in the chat, so it is now an open Blue Wrench Lodge. This is a story that someone mentioned the other day. The famous railing from the Titanic, the guardrail, broke off the Titanic. Titanic wreck deteriorates further as iconic railing breaks off. Why is this significant? Largely because in the movie, you have the scene where DiCaprio and the woman are on the tip of the ship and they're leaning against the rails. That just broke. Now, on the 17th of August, on Robert De Niro's birthday, he jumped off that yacht. And this was just days after he publicly made some statement about Leonardo DiCaprio. And we were talking about this in the context of the theme song to the Titanic being played at Trump rallies and Celine Dion mocking Trump over it. So connecting this together, the sinking of the Titanic as a artifact of this bigger script, I mean, it's symbolic, of course. It represents a number of things, but specifically the sinking of the West. But Trump is also correlated, connected with this whole theme. So the De Niro jumping off the yacht, the Leonardo DiCaprio reference, Titanic reference, these are all things we've been taking note of. Like if you recall the door from the movie prop in the Titanic was auctioned off just days before that big ship hit the bridge in Baltimore, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. National anthem, reiterating this theme of the West, America, sinking, etc. And so we're just looking here at the guardrail on the Titanic falling off. What does that mean? There's no coincidences on the world stage, and for all intents and purposes, the Titanic should be considered a massive prop. This is one of these things we've consistently talked about on this channel because of its role in kind of mirroring, like as in the Titanic, the metaphor, the movie even, mirroring this broader theme. And there are connections between James Cameron's work in general, but specifically the Titanic, connecting it not only to 9/11, but some future scenarios intimated, which I believe has to do with the sinking or falling of the ISS. But let me play this clip. And we're looking at New Titanic photo reveals railing on the ship's bow has fallen off. Again, believe it if you want. Pop quiz: how many trips did James Cameron take down to the wreckage of the ISS? I'm sorry, of the Titanic. And in between dives, he spent time at his $33 million mansion. Just a hint there. Yeah, 33 dives. He was there on 9/11, which further cements the connection because the movie has predictive programming. Titanic splitting in two, one part going vertical, has jumpers. It has a lot of predictive programming for 9/11, as did Terminator 2. But then on that day, he's at the site of the Titanic filming Ghosts in the Abyss. Highly symbolic, ritualistic activity. And by ritualistic, I mean every part of it has some kind of symbolic import connecting to this bigger story. And interestingly, it ties into Revelation 9/11 and the bottomless pit or the abyss, the angel over the abyss. And James Cameron's submersible is called the Deep Sea Challenger. So I think you could correlate the Challenger filming the abyss with the angel, the destroyer Apollyon in the abyss. It's an interesting story, but again, the Titanic being brought up is not a small thing. We are joined by Austin 108 LAC Diana South Osher, who gave 5 wrenches out today. Much appreciated. Ears Up, Armin Reed, Plain Decoded. Quays, Masonic Charlatan, Ted Striker 2112, Dominic, Shannon Jones. Let's Go says hello, Raft. Frank Murr with the penguin. Tominoid says Molly Brown, Titanic survivor, nickname of the Gemini 3 space capsule. Okay, now this is going to get interesting here in a minute. There's a reason why I wanted to start off with this Titanic story, and it's not just because I'm tired of talking about celebrity influencers who eat dog food. Okay, Gemini 3, Molly Brown. Grissom playfully dubbed the capsule Molly Brown, referring to both a survivor of the sinking of the Titanic and his Mercury capsule, which filled with water and sank in the Atlantic after splashdown. There's a lot to unpack there. Very interesting. But this kind of connects to right now. We're talking about the Calypso capsule stranding these 2 astronauts, 2 of them with the name Will, or William. And let me bring up the 2 astronauts because they're still stranded. They actually just brought the capsule down, landed here in New Mexico. So you got Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. And we had made some connections that there were connections out there that seemingly connect this with the sinking of the submersible, the Titan, last year. We were forecasting disaster on this for that reason. But we had noted the names, Butch Wilmore, Suni Williams, and this Gemini connection between all of it, the Gemini twins. So we're watching this thing very closely just for the symbolism here. So it's notable here that we have this Gemini 3 space capsule nicknamed for a Titanic survivor. We seem to be getting somewhere with this. And let me show you this other thing that came up. And then we'll talk about RFK. I think he got vaxxed. I think he did. Let me play this really quick, and then I want to get into this fascinating connection between Suni Williams and Tom Cruise. Here's RFK inexplicably shaking in this extremely cringe video. Yeah, terrible. Not the cringiest thing I've seen from the MAGA side. I think Roger Stone dancing for Horatio Blow, the MAGA rapper, was way worse. But that's pretty bad. But this was something that someone posted yesterday, and it struck me as highly interesting and significant. Here it is. Sunita Williams wanted to be a diver. Changed mind after seeing cool Tom Cruise in Top Gun movie. So she's celebrating her birthday in space. She wanted to join NASA in 1998. Just a backstory about her, but look at this headline. She wanted to be a diver, changed her mind after seeing Tom Cruise in Top Gun. I think some of the ironies here, the connection here is simply that you can't go to space without being a diver, first of all. You have to be a certified diver to go on the ISS. Make of that what you will. I mean, some people are still under the delusion, or at least they pay homage to the delusion that they're still in space. Even with this Boeing thing, when they just dropped off the capsule, there were articles on Reddit. People are saying, look, there's UFOs in the background. Those are bubbles. And the light diffusion is evidence that this is underwater. Like, I don't know who's still playing along with this. I mean, I know who is, Normieville, but like, if you figured out the moon landing was fake, we can stop talking about the space station like it's anything other than a movie. And don't get distracted by people claiming they've seen it. It's just more UFO level claims. But Tom Cruise is going to space very soon, quote unquote. And how is that going to work? A space station, which is already a movie, is now going to have a movie studio inside of it. And this is going to create a problem, I believe. And I saw this coming in the ISS movie, and I was right. When I saw this movie about the ISS was coming out, and it was out on 119, highly significant number, ties into the fall of the Tower of Babel. But that movie was, to me, a test. It's like, they can't make it look too much better than the, quote, real thing. They're going to have to dumb down the graphics. They're not going to have the hair sticking up with hairspray, which is what you would see on the real ISS. But I was wondering, how are they going to do the hair? Because if they do it CGI-like and it's all flowy, it's going to look better than NASA's. So what they did is they had all the hair tied back. There was not one loose hair in the movie ISS. So that's one thing. Another thing, there were several scenes where I noticed that when the astronauts are floating around, it looks clunky, like they can't quite get it right. So they deliberately dumbed it down because we know they've already figured out how to fake space. So many movies do it expertly. So they dumbed it down on purpose. So now they're going to have Tom Cruise film a movie in the space station. So it's going to be a movie filmed on a movie set that pretends to be real. And what are they going to do with his hair? Are they going to hairspray it up like Sunita Williams, the Medusa, do, where it's all sticking out? Is he going to wear gel in space? I mean, what are they going to do with Tom Cruise's hair? And if they do anything that doesn't look like that cheesy hairspray effect, then whatever comes out of the movie studio attached to the space station is going to look realer than the space station. So I'm just saying, it's going to induce cognitive dissonance headaches, for me anyway. Like, how are they going to... Unfortunately, the public will believe anything. Okay, let's continue here. Catching up on comments. Tomanoid says off the rails. Yeah, I want to point out too that the term guardrails was not attached to media until I put out a book called Guardrails about how conspiracy theories are used to corral free thinkers. But the guard railing of dialogue, the guard railing of conversations, and what defines the boundary of acceptable discourse, that's something that I've been talking about. And I've been using this term in this way. And if you search for guardrails on Google, you would find materials for building guardrails for roads. And then my book. There's like no other mention of it. But now that term has been used with great frequency to describe putting controls into AI. And I'm constantly seeing that term bandied about. So when we're talking about the guardrails falling off the Titanic, it sounds more symbolic than not. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Guardrails. Okay, now I'm going to put news for headlines. Built-in set of guardrails to protect Trump. Here we go. Global Summit calls for guardrails for military use of AI. How Australia's new AI guardrails can clean up the messy market for AI. It's been attached to this. Mandatory guardrails on AI. We need more people to use it. And to do that, we need to build trust. Fascinating. All right, continuing here. Janky Frame Cover says, been trying to point out to a friend a bunch of 88s I've seen in the news cycles, and he's not receptive to it until he saw it come up on his own. Sometimes planting a seed does work. Maybe. Personally, I think not. Because when someone experiences doubt about the mainstream, about the integrity of the vision, they're already being directed to go to the alt media, which is a huge trap. So I hope that when people are shown or being breadcrumbed on things, they wouldn't find like their answers in Trutherville, but that's pretty much the trend. Most people will default to that. It's really insane. But I don't believe in breadcrumbing. I don't believe in dropping hints or planting seeds. Like I'm not some kind of like I think that's disingenuous. I think it's like tricky. It's culty in a way. You know, it's like you're hiding what you're really saying. And also, I don't like recruitment tactics in general, like cult recruitment tactics. Like, oh, we're just asking questions. I kind of reject the premise that just asking questions is valid. In the information age, you shouldn't just be asking questions. That is a way to dodge accountability for whatever you're smuggling into your premise. I think instead you should be answering questions and then providing your findings. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't even bother, to be honest. I don't bother trying to, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I think there are enough people who've already figured it out. We just need to get that group into this parallel media branch, this new branch of media, this third branch. We just need the people who've already figured it out. The people who are married to the deception will fight you tooth and nail. They will reject it anyway. Truthers are too married to their orthodoxies, and they get hostile when you try to disabuse them of their delusions. For example, we have this formerly regular caller. I'm pretty sure I blocked him. And he was really mad that I don't believe in chemtrails. And he called me a weasel and I think he said I was a Zog weasel, and I was covering up chemtrails. He got really mad at me on Twitter, and I just blocked him. And then he emailed me, and he called me a Jewish weasel. And I'm like, what? Where do you go? Where do you go with that? With some of these people, I don't know what they're. I guess I do understand. Like everybody who disagrees with them is whatever they think is the worst person in the world, and so that's just his paradigm. So I understand the paradigm, I guess. But so easily triggered. But it was over chemtrails. Think about it. Over chemtrails, this guy got so triggered, and I'm like, well, if you're that triggered, you're that mad, and you're gonna make weird ethnic slurs that don't even apply on people you don't know over the internet, then maybe you should at least be concerned enough about these so-called chemtrails to wear a mask. No, it wasn't Cunify, although Cunify also threw the J at me. He called me this. He said I was also covering, I was Mossad, I'm a Jew, and I'm like, where do these people come from? But I'm glad. I'm glad that I think we've made enough noise regarding certain issues. So the Mandela affected aren't trying to flood the raft. The geoengineering chicken littles aren't trying to flood the raft. And if we can get the Hitler stands to just stay where they are, that would be great. And so, like, yeah, they're obviously part of the political horseshoe. If you're CRT, which is Woketown, critical race theory, you're in the political horseshoe. You're on the fringe. And if you are CJT, critical Jew theory, you're in the political horseshoe. You're on the fringe. And you can't separate that from everything else. Even if you know how fake the news is, if you're still applying this understanding to the political horseshoe, it still becomes very partisan, and it's not big picture enough. It's a big red herring. And if you can't see that it's a red herring, then great. You know, let the red herrings keep these truthers on the mainland. The raft needs to be pure of people with political agendas, religious agendas, or blood purity agendas, whether it's genetics or vax. I mean, yeah, I don't really have time for that anyway. So I'm glad for them to go ahead and explode, to lose their S. And they really do. I like Cunify. I did, sort of, but he went into Discord and he just went on a spamming spree, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't really relate to people who hate a bunch of people they don't know. And I don't get out enough and know enough people to really hate any of them, generally speaking. I tend to like strangers more than I like the people that I actually know, because I find people to be pleasant and relatable. But these internet cults put people into these frames of reference where it's very much about, are you in my tribe or not? Are you defending my interests or not? And most of them don't even live up to their own standards. I mean, you look at people like Nick Fuentes, and he's just an internet troll pretending to be some kind of supremacist. And even if they implemented what he wants implemented, he wouldn't be allowed in this country. His family would be thrown out. So it's just a bunch of LARPers. And if you fall for that stuff, that's really on you. It's your time. You can waste it. Uh, I don't want to even talk about Hitler and Jews or religion because I'm focused on media deconstruction. I was never a preacher. I don't have it in my path to preach the Bible and wake people up. Like, I was never a priest. I don't know if somebody started a rumor that I was a priest, but I'm not a priest. If you're looking for spiritual counsel, I'm not the one. In fact, I'm probably leading you in the wrong direction. So I would like, in fact, I'm certain of it. I'm certain that if you've just listened to me, you're probably going the wrong direction spiritually, because like I'm not offering any kind of guidance in that way. I do believe that there is a soul or something, but I don't believe that any book has the final say, and I'm not even interested in debating it. I don't want to get into that. Like, I don't want to debate your woke politics if you're woke. I don't want to talk about your Republican platform if you think J.D. Vance is a great guy. Like, I wouldn't even take those phone calls. So why am I going to talk about, or somebody's Mormonism? Or let's have a Jehovah's Witness trying to sell us on their ideas. Like, no, I'm not here to cater or pander to religious interests. I'm just not. And yeah, and besides that, beyond that, I don't want to get into ethnic purity contests. You know, I get called names. I've been called reptile. I've been called every group, whatever. I don't think we have time for that. What we're doing here is we're articulating a philosophical framework, a methodology for determining what's real and fake when presented from mainstream mediation. And I use mediation, not media, because I'm referring to media writ large, the entire unified field, and how there is an entrainment going on between the entertainment and the news. Everything else is distraction. Now, if somebody wants to have a private conversation from me or with me about religion and gods and stuff, we can do it offline or maybe make a one-on-one podcast about it. But I really don't want to get distracted by that, because let's say we did that. Let's say we make this thing about deconstructing media and blood purity. Well, then suddenly we just outgroup an entire demographic based on their ancestry. And then we're also opening up the doors to a lot of nasty people like Nick Fuentes. And you might say, well, these people aren't that bad. They're just Christian nationalists. Well, no. If you buy into the whole CJT narrative, critical Jew theory, then you're also buying into all kinds of racist and sexist stuff, which is built into it. And so I don't want to platform misogynists, tater tots, rape apologists, and any kind of hatred. Like, it's not my thing. But if it's your thing, make a channel about it. Okay, let's see here. What's up, Esteban? This is doubleheader from, yes, you're from New Mexico as well. Awesome. Yeah, I was live earlier painting. So yeah, I'm going to keep religion out of this, but I will respect people's religious beliefs. You're not going to hear me trashing what somebody believes. And that's because I think it's intensely personal. And also, even having looked into it closely, I kind of think that people have a subjective language with which they communicate with their subconscious, the higher self. I think I can understand why people might have different interpretations. So I don't want to get into this idea of this person's God's the right one and that one's not. These people are going to hell, these people aren't. But again, I'm not the one to listen to. Like, I'm probably sending you to hell. Messianic Charlatan says, Johnny Circucci told me you're a Jesuit of the fifth vow. How would he know? I haven't seen him at any meetings. Although I do have Jesuits in my family, or I did. I think my great-grandfather was Society of Jesus. Never met him. But I freely admit that after the military, I was actually impressed by a lot of the Masons I met. Most of them were Prince Hall. I had a Prince Hall Mason sign off on my papers to get me into the Blue Lodge when I decided to join right after the military. I make no secret about it. And I did meet a lot of Masons who were also Knights of Columbus. There's this misconception that they don't mix. There's some overlap. Okay, let's see here. Going through your comments. Yeah, and I'm not trying to mischaracterize anybody. If somebody is anti-Semite, but they don't worship Hitler, I'm not trying to group you all in. You're not all Hitler stans. I get that. But I don't even like to play identity politics. I think it's regressive. I think it's a waste of time. I'm more focused on individuals. Always have been. Like, I've never hated groups, but I've hated many individuals. And I hate a diverse array of individuals. And it's based on conduct. And generally my hate is pretty shallow. It's like, yeah, I hate the guy that stole my catalytic converter. I think he could apply his skills towards something different. But I don't lose sleep over it. Although, if you catch somebody taking your catalytic converter, I'd recommend that you don't interrupt them. Just back off, because there's reports of people getting shot interrupting people doing stupid things like that. Totally not worth it. Not worth it as a job anyway. You have no protections, no insurance, and you're working with dangerous metals. I think you're underselling your skill sets. And the person who took my catalytic converter actually missed the good part. He took the muffler. So all he did was annoyed my neighbors. Bach Precision says Adolf was a character, clearly. Yeah, I'm in the camp that Adolf Hitler was played by Walt Disney. Like, I find that to be very plausible. But I want to point out one thing. When this think tank started, we didn't want to be overwhelmed by people with agendas, religious, racial, or otherwise. So we had a rule at the beginning. No Bible thumping, no Mein Kampf thumping, no media advocacy. So if you're advocating on behalf of a religion, an ideology, a political platform, I just reserve the right to hang up, because we're not focused on that. There's, like, if you need that, there's plenty of it. Go to X, go to 4chan, go to Stu Peters, you know, if that's what you're looking for, or go to Tucker Carlson these days. Listen to Candace Owen. I mean, you can listen to both. You can get your fill of haterade or whatever you need. But at this point, I think you're being played. I think the entire genre of alt-right, white genocide is what they call it. It's a huge scam. It's as bad a scam as wokeism. It's victim consciousness. And it's also a huge funny joke, if you think about it. It's just a perfect illustration of how easily people can be Pied Pipered by internet grifters. And then they get exposed. Like, look at this guy who was on Tim Pool. This should tell you everything. You know, whether or not Tim Pool's really getting paid $100K a week by Russia to push pro-Russia talking points, he had Donnie Darkind on. Donnie Darkind is preaching that Trump is the Antichrist, Trump is the devil, don't follow Trump. And then his other account, which is huge, is follow Trump, Trump's the best. And then he's got pictures with Donald Trump Jr., pictures with Candace Owen, pictures with right-wing influencers. And it's like, how is this same person playing both sides? And if you and this is typical. You know, this is how they all operate. You can't trust any of these big channels. If they don't have their faces, if they're hiding behind some avatar, you should immediately disregard them. And by faces, I mean if they're not accountable. Like, I don't care if you're anonymous, as long as you're accountable to what you say. You're actually owning it. Like you could be using a moniker. It doesn't have to be your real name. But there are anons who dodge accountability, and Donnie Darkin got doxxed, and now he's been scrubbing his content. He's been scrubbing it all because it's been revealed he's a huge scammer. And when you look behind the scenes, like even like Stu Peters and his whole clique, all the people around him, they're all bickering and infighting over royalties from their anti-vax documentaries. And apparently, Stu Peters not only is not complying, I think he's really hard to work with, but he ripped on Laura Witzke for having a baby that's not pure white enough. Like, these people are so nasty. They're trolls to each other. It's a spectacle, but what I'm pointing out is, like, I want no part of that. And the instant I open up the phones to somebody talking about, you know, my white genocide and my race, I'm like, okay, no thanks. That's blue pill garbage. Okay, let's move on. And I only brought this up because I had some psychopath emailing me. I could bring up the email if you want to read it. He misraced me. You know, I've been misgendered, now I've been misraced. I don't know what hurts more. Okay, Carmine. This is the guy. And you might remember him because he would frequently call and then he would break out into this evil villain laughter. Okay, I found the emails. Very, very, he's like psychopathic. You know, I noticed that psychopaths and sociopaths have two different approaches. And sociopaths are generally slick, pretty smooth about things, but the psychopaths can't read the room. They're very, like, really just tone deaf when it comes to their messaging. Anyway, here is what he wrote to me. Little Jew Weasel blocks me on x.cohen. So I'm assuming Cohen is some kind of code. But I blocked him because he was going crazy on Twitter. And he followed me to my email. Very interesting. Don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm not all that interested. I don't have a lot of time to deal with gremlins as it is. Okay, let's continue. Lieutenant Weinberg says, I'm curious about the Titanic ship of state esoteric reference. I understand the 9/11 Apollo bottomless pit stuff, but not the Titanic so much. Okay, so let's... Yeah, the Titanic thing has a lot of references that have built up over the years. For example, the recent movie Don't Look Up is what clued me into this. And Don't Look Up is about a comet about to hit the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. 614 is a huge Trump number. It's his birth date. And we've connected this 614 to the... And it's a planet-killing comet hurtling towards the Earth. To a couple of things. But the main thing here is this. The comet's going to hit the Earth, and the scientists that are warning everyone about it aren't taken too seriously. And that's because the capitalists want to mine the comet. So they put money ahead of safety. Instead of deflecting the thing and saving Gaia, they put money first. And so the space iceberg, the comet, hits the Earth and sinks it. So here's Leonardo DiCaprio, who's the face of this movie. So when I watched the movie, I immediately attached this to, okay, the Earth as Titanic. The West is going to sink the whole world. Western values. The greed of these tech billionaires, people like Elon Musk. Because the main character, one of the main characters, the one who's deciding to mine the comet, is obviously a mix of... I think he's a mix of Elon Musk and maybe a bit of Bezos, I would think, and possibly even, well, he's kind of an amalgamation. Let me see if I can find his face. But the general story is that the world gets hit by this thing because we let money get ahead of saving the Earth. And this is sort of the environmentalist theme. So is this a metaphor for climate change? Yeah, it was like a Steve Jobs, Elon Musk mashup, I would say. And so this movie is kind of like a cautionary tale. But the reason they chose Leonardo DiCaprio, my contention was when I wrote my review on it, is that they wanted to invoke the Titanic. And I haven't looked to see if anyone else has arrived at the same conclusion. A few things about it. In the movie, he's 100% agoraphobic. He constantly has to take pills to go outside. And that's to convey the idea that if you're aware of the science, you wouldn't be able to go outside. You wouldn't be able to look up. So Don't Look Up is kind of also an ironic statement about misinformation. Don't look up for yourself. Trust the experts. People not trusting the experts is the reason why this happens. Now, right around the time the movie Don't Look Up came out, Leonardo DiCaprio apparently, and I remember this story at the time, he dove into an icy lake. Listen to this. Leonardo DiCaprio jumps into a frozen lake to save dogs while filming Don't Look Up. So a number of articles came out talking about how he became the real-life version of his Titanic role. The time DiCaprio jumped into the frozen lake. So they were kind of making these references around the same time. Now, the reason why this is a important connection is now we're looking at the Earth as Titanic, the sinking of the entire planet because of course, again, the West and climate change. Now, a couple of other things that would correlate to this is that the ISS, the Twin Towers, and the Titanic are kind of connected in this story. So first, the Titanic and the 9/11 connections we've already talked about, specifically James Cameron making those connections. The sinking of the Twin Towers, the World Trade Tower, the sinking of it is also sort of, it's essentially the same story being told. The world trade. The International Space Station, similarly, unites the whole world. And symbolically, one language, the internet, one mission from Earth to the heavens. It's very much this Tower of Babel. And in a way, it's kind of emblematic of man's hubris, like too big to fail. Endless growth through capitalism without thinking about the effects on Mother Earth, on nature. So ultimately, the Don't Look Up, the West, it all ties all into this climate justice as well and climate change. That if we don't change the way we live, if we don't adopt something that's more globally sustainable, we're all going to die. Reoccurring theme here. And so the sinking of the West, the sinking of this way of life is what's being represented symbolically through this story, this meta-scripted tale. The Titanic, the trade towers, and now the ISS. You have the abyss below, the land, and then, of course, the abyss above. And it seems to me that the predictive programming for the ISS falling symbolizes the culmination of this. And a couple of other points about this. The ISS movie has Russia nuking America. And if you haven't seen it, I think it's terrible. But it ties into this idea. It's a 2023 science fiction thriller. We talked about it because of the hair. But here's an image of the space station falling to Earth. And, interestingly, if you look at the ISS, just the architecture of it, there are often images of it where it kind of looks Twin Tower-y. I mean, look at these solar panels, the solar array. Tell me they don't look like the Twin Towers. And I think this is all by design. Okay, let me catch up on comments. We'll continue on along this line of discourse, but so the one world falling apart is one of the themes here with the Tower of Babel falling. Leave the world behind, the internet blacking out. And Leave the World Behind has this the soundtrack, which I think is worth looking over as well. Remember, Leave the World Behind is also an anagram for Behold the End War Live. And I think that's a statement on how we're all just going to watch it on TV. We're going to be locked down. Okay, now on the soundtrack, there's one of the songs at the beginning is called, here are the songs. I want to get the name of it right so I can, oh yeah, it's Joey Badass's The Revenge. Now, the video for The Revenge has a blackout. Very much like this intentional shutting down of the power. So the blackout is the cutting of the communication, the one language. So this is the scattering of the tongues, the fall of the Tower of Babel. Also want to point out that New York is represented as Babylon in the St. John, the Divine Cathedral, in the pillars where it has the Twin Towers being bowled over by a tidal wave. So this is biblical meta-scripting. Here you have Joey Badass again in the video. He's blowing up a transformer. So I'm just bringing these things up because these are all elements here. And then another element too is in Leave the World Behind, there was the racial undertones. Like I think the story was actually about Barack Obama and Michelle and the White House. That the house they were renting, that Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke's characters were renting, represented the White House. And Obama's coming into the White House and this antagonism. And there were scenes in that movie that were explicitly portraying all the white characters as very racist. For example, they had Julia Roberts posing in front of a painting, and it had like these white stripes, and it made it look like she had a Klan hood, and she was at a Klan meeting. I have this on one of my blogs. And I'm pointing this out because the fall of the Tower of Babel refers to the dissolution of America. The 1619 colliding with 1776, this collision of worldviews. That's why in Leave the World Behind, the first ship that hit the shore was called the White Lion, which is the ship in 1619 that started the transatlantic slave trade. So we're looking at this story that's being conveyed about the fall of the West. Interestingly, we talked about Revelation 9/11, and it has the destroyer in the abyss. And destroyer, by the way, is another term for the nuke from Oppenheimer. But Revelation 9/11, destroyer in the abyss. Genesis 11:9 or 1:19, the reverse of it, refers to the fall of the Tower of Babel and the scattering of the tongues. Now, James Cameron is also connected to a couple of other psyops almost directly. You can connect James Cameron not just to 9/11, which was also forecast in Terminator 2, but also the LA riots, because the footage that kicked off the riots was from a film. Look at this, how James Cameron led to the LA riots. Now, Rodney King was beat for 1 minute, 19 seconds. Very significant here, 119. He was hit 33 times, and that was on March 3rd, 1991. But the connection here with James Cameron is this. George Holliday was filming Terminator 2 from the sidelines. He saw that they were filming this movie, and he had his handheld camera, and he starts recording it, this George Holliday. Afterward, and remember, Terminator 2 is about what? An evil cop. They turned a cop into a villain. So this is a reversal, a pretty significant one. And so now the cop is the big bad guy, and this guy's filming this movie on the sidelines, James Cameron. Then moments later, this tape makes history because he's walking home, and he watches these evil police officers beating Rodney King, and he takes that footage. So the footage goes from Terminator 2 to Rodney King beating to kicking off these riots. So it's kind of an interesting but not insignificant connection between a major event and James Cameron, just as you have all these other symbolic links between his Titanic work and 9/11. And it goes much deeper with James Cameron. We're just sort of scratching the surface here. But a lot of his work has been connected with the idea of saving Gaia from the West, from toxic masculinity. And who better epitomizes toxic masculinity? And James Cameron did say that testosterone is a toxin. So look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. He epitomizes this, and he makes him the ultimate bad guy. Similarly, his Avatar movies make the West look like bad guys because they're plundering a jungle planet because they killed Gaia because they didn't know Gaia was alive. Now they're plundering Pandora, killing off the indigenous. All these Marines who can't connect to nature. This is James Cameron's critique of the West. And I would argue that his Avatar series was meant to do for environmentalism what the Blue Marble photo did in 1972. And there's a lot of suggestion here, a lot of actually evidence here, I would say, that James Cameron has actually been used by NASA for propaganda purposes. He's been working with them for decades. But I think his Avatar films were part of introducing this blue marble concept and Gaia consciousness. Because when the globe was seen in its entirety, now the environmentalist movement had an idol. And the idea of it having a singular consciousness was introduced. Cameron reintroduced this with Skynet and in Pandora, which has a consciousness. And in Avatar 2, he reveals that Gaia was conscious. So what does this have to do with this sinking of the West? It has to do with the idea that the West and Western values are incompatible with recognizing that Gaia is sentient and we all need to be basically nature worshipers, and we need to cut off our fossil fuels. We need to put nature first and dodge the incoming comet, the iceberg that's going to hit our Titanic, which is, of course, climate change. So all of his work is really a condemnation of the West. And it repeats the themes. Like if you watched Dances with Wolves and Fern Gully combined and you get Avatar. But it's all propaganda is my point. And his work is very significant. I mentioned the 9/11 connections, the Rodney King. The Rodney King connection I mentioned because a lot of these race war psyops, the George Floyd thing, have all the same symbolism attached. Why do you think the 846 was so prominent around the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin thing? 846 is the time of mourning that 9/11 kicks off. It was a 9/11ing of America. It was also pitting the BLM, which is, you could call it a Marxist front group, class warfare against the West. It made this very clear. That's why I point out the significance of Derek Chauvinism's name, Derek Western Chauvinism. It's all symbolic. As we've talked about for some time, but these are not irrelevant points. We were just talking about the Monkey Man movie that came out on 3/11 and its connection to, again, 3/11, the virus, the mind virus, the rage virus, and how Jordan Peele produced that, and how his movie Nope, which had a killer chimp, was inspired by the George Floyd event. In other words, the rage virus. Because if you look at that event, the way he describes it, the spectacle, that 846, that video, incited riots in the way that a mind virus, if it was a rage virus, would. And we've seen this constant connection between the rage virus, disease X, and now this monkey god, monkey man, Planet of the Apes. There's a lot of correlations here. The rage virus from 28 Days Later, a book written by the guy who directed Civil War. And what would prompt the Civil War? The rage virus, symbolized by, of course, this monkeypox and this monkey god symbolism, which all just came out at one time. But they have introduced, and we are in the age of the mind virus. People believe it's real. And I would also say that they use 2020 to condition the masses to accept the existence of the mind virus, the thought crime that has to be censored. They're not going to censor you by force, just like they're not going to, like in George Orwell's nightmarish vision, there were going to be cameras everywhere you couldn't avoid, total surveillance society. No, they used some Edward Bernays mind control PR stunt magic to condition people to embrace social media and to become self-surveillancing. So we are more than a total surveillance society. Every social media platform is a mind-reading device, and people just upload their minds onto the web for everyone to see. Similarly, they are conditioning the public to desire censorship, to expect that we all mask our minds, that the commons be free of mind viruses. They're engineering a population to be compliant with every single new agenda. There's not going to be resistance to it. And Musk is there to provide the rationale. That's why X is called X. It is disease X, and it represents the final push to purify the worldview. I've been describing for some time the mass media as the de facto world state church. And the black screen, your little iPhone, that is the Bible for this new church. But it's not perfect yet. It hasn't been totally censored. They have to get rid of the non-canonical, the non-approved, the conspiracy theory, the heresy, the non-believers, the conspiracy theorists that go too far. When they've removed that, in other words, the mind junk, the mind viruses, then it will be acceptable. And that's what they're working toward. And I pointed this out, I think it was in 2017. I called Elon Musk the Martian Pope, and I compared him to Pope Constantine. And I said one of his roles would be the consolidation of this new Bible. And this was way before he bought X and had any role in media where he would be able to censor stuff. And so now we're seeing it. And it's not that he's censoring it. He's providing the pretext for wider society to accept this. And I've been vindicated in this if you just look at the way that it's being treated right now with Brazil blocking X. You have Europe threatening to arrest him. It's just Brazil blocks X after Musk ignores court orders. This is all recent news. This is what I said would be the quarantining of the commons to protect it from disease X. And this is a long-term agenda. They started off with safe spaces, and then they went into social distancing, and then they correlated those who were opposed to social distancing with the mind viruses that spread the real virus. So they created a tangible fear about conspiracy theories because now they have a lethal effect. Now the non-believers are dangerous asymptomatic super spreaders. Well, they're making the same arguments where now those of us who communicate freely online, who aren't mentally ill, are asymptomatic super spreaders of dangerous mind viruses that can infect people who have weak mental immune systems. And that's why every single mass shooter is said to be mentally ill. Oh, he caught a mind virus on Discord and he shot up a school. He caught a mind virus listening to Tucker Carlson and he shot up a grocery store in a black neighborhood. That's disease X. And the public believes in it now. Like, we don't have autonomy. You're exposed to a mind virus and now you believe it and act on it. Well, that's true if you don't have any critical thinking. And critical thinking to filter out mind viruses has been removed by design. Through public education, conditioning, and the way that media operates, the government has effectively infected the global population with mind aids. They don't have any defense against these ideas. And even if they have some modicum of critical thinking, it's only applied in a partisan way. They're only half critical, only half skeptical. They're half credulous, half low information believers. Okay, let me continue through your comments. Bach Precision says, another correlation, there's a ship called the United States and it's being retired, very symbolic. Yes. Yeah, it's very symbolic for a lot of reasons. The destroyer in the abyss, also in Hebrew, is Abaddon, or Abaddon. We've actually made this connection to Donald Trump before the media called him a mafia don. But also Apollyon, which some have correlated to Napoleon, who could be a personification of the sun, according to some interpretations. And there are some interesting Napoleon connections to Trump, metascript-wise, that connect to this. So I'm watching the new Napoleon movie right now. And you know what it opens up with? This Joaquin Phoenix Joker. This new Napoleon movie opens up with the scene of Marie Antoinette having her head chopped off. The Paris Olympics opens with Gojira performing, which means Godzilla, nuke reference. And adjacent to them on the window is Marie Antoinette with her head held in her arms because she's been decapitated. And if you recall, it opened up with scenes of the Statue of Liberty busted up. There's the ISS above it for some reason. Then you have the moon with the bullet hole in the eye. Anyway, the symbolism has been fascinating this entire summer, especially with the Olympics. But I'm thinking there's some connection here with the Marie Antoinette thing. Catching up on your comments, and then we'll go through my notes again. Observing Reality says, people are finding out their emotional attachments to what they've been taught doesn't make sense, making them easier to target with fear and dread. Yeah, well, I really want to keep this objective, and I have for some time. That's why I've been really taking a hard stance against allowing certain topics to be open to mystification, specifically when it comes to mass media. We can examine the symbolism, the ritualistic structuring of it, the connection to the mystery schools, and the culture of the power elite. It's all there. Like, we've identified the secret religion of the elite. They worship power, but they do seem to have some kind of pantheistic, astrotheological cult at the root of it all. But it is a mystery school by all definitions. You could call NASA an Egyptian mystery school. That, yeah, they have their exoteric production for the masses, but behind the scenes, there is some symbolic import behind these burning obelisks being sent up into, quote, space. So, we're not wrong for looking at this stuff, but my point is, I don't want to get into the simplification of the power elite are evil, let's all go to church and just read from the Bible all day. Like, I'm not here to, again, I'm not qualified. Like, I haven't been to seminary school. I couldn't perform an exorcism if you were possessed. I don't think I could help you. I could maybe officiate a wedding, I guess. But I don't even think I have the demeanor for that. So, like, I'm a dead end spiritually. And unfortunately, that makes me decapitatable. That makes me an enemy. That makes me a bad guy. It makes me a gatekeeper for Zog. I mean, it makes me all kinds of bad things. But you can't please everyone. Like, which religion, which mob are you going to kneel to? Which mob are you going to self-sacrifice your individuality to and subject it to the authority of the group? Like, I, as an individual, have no value. The standard of value is the group. So let me just join this group. And you join one group, and now it's the wrong group because, oh, in this group, oh, your leader is a pedophile and a some kind of warlord who chopped a bunch of people's heads off. Okay, I don't know if I want to go with that one. But if I don't, then I'm their enemy, supposedly. I mean, it's just there's so much animosity between them. You choose this group, and then within that group, you're not pure enough if you're not this denomination. And all these different denominations condemning each other. Like, who has the right religion? And then you have the atheists who look down on all the other religions. Like, oh, look at you with your little petty antiquity, your archaic squabbles, these ancient myths you're fighting over. Meanwhile, they're part of a new iteration of the same religions, the same structures. They have their new flood myth. They have their God constructs. They have a concept of sin, which they call virus. They have heaven. They call it space. They have every aspect of the old religious mind control system programmed into them under the disguise of science. Nasatology is a religion. It's not a scientific pursuit. It's not man achieving the singularity and becoming multiplanetary. It's a lie. It's idealism. Scientism is the world religion right now. And it's essentially they believe whatever the priests say. And unfortunately, the priests of scientism don't always adhere to science. Sometimes they use science augmented with special effects. Yeah, man went to the moon, but it wasn't science that took him there, it was movie magic. And man only went mentally, in his imagination. Let me catch up on your comments. There's so much going on here. Esteban says, the guy in the Rodney King beatdown looked nothing like the guy we saw play Rodney King. I'm open to the possibility that much of that was staged. And if you can fake it in the movies, you can fake it in the news. It's axiomatic to say that. If you can fake it in Terminator 2, riots, large-scale destruction, mayhem, you can fake it on the news. And a movie set, when it's in a city, is a closed set for all intents and purposes for anything. I'm surprised, and let me just go and make this prediction here. I'm surprised that the city I'm in hasn't been the center for a major psyop. I'm talking mass event of some kind. And the reason why is that Netflix is here. There are movie companies here all over the place filming movies. And if you close down an area, you can produce content. You can create content to be inserted into the, quote, live news later. A lot of this stuff isn't live. You can't assume it's all live. There are insert shots. There are prefabricated bits of footage that are going to be inserted in later. Look at the work of Gelatin B for 9/11 and the content they created, which they said, our little project we've been working on here in the Twin Towers in 2001 is going to be presented to the public on 9/11. And for all people who are interested, they're like, oh, I guess their art show got canceled. Or did it? What was their art show? Gelatin B is a huge clue. And interestingly, there's a clue that connects to it in Fight Club when he's talking about gelatin-covered columns in buildings, gelatin explosives. And as he's talking about these gelatin explosives in buildings to bring them all down, behind him, you have the Century City Twin Towers behind the main character in Fight Club. Same architect as the World Trade Towers. So gelatin, what we're saying here is that, yeah, controlled demolition, obviously. Like, I'm not a reality denialist. We all know 9/11 happened. The difference is, what we think happened. And what we what we can actually say confidently is that, yeah, it was a controlled demolition. No space lasers, nothing else. Wasn't the chemtrail juice in the planes that's super flammable, that burns hotter than jet fuel. No, it was a controlled demolition, augmented with movie magic. It's pretty simple. Okay, again, going through your comments, there's quite a lot going on. Dirk says, yes, Tim, now I'm awake. I see hundreds of hidden connections. Yeah, this is the thing. The connections are intentionally planted. It's synchronized. I have 100 examples. Probably more than that. Whether it's Waco, American Apocalypse, released the night before Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco, to HBO's Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, where the queen dies giving birth to a child in a brutal way, like she's forced to give birth, and the men there kill her in the process, just as Roe v. Wade is overturned and there's marches going on for that. We have multiple examples, like, for example, season finale of The Boys having to change Assassination Run because of the connection to the Trump thing. We have so many examples of these Netflix and Amazon and other films coming out. I'm watching one right now called Bad Monkey because it came out on 8/14, the same day the WHO said that there was the monkeypox pandemic. So we see so many alignments that, no, it's entrainment. They're entraining our dreaming mind, our subconscious, loading it with post-hypnotic suggestions, and they're using it to make us believe the history which they're acting out on the world stage. The power elite write our history. They're not just editing it, exerting some control over what happens. They're actually prefabricating it. They act out the major events on the world stage and write it into the history books as fact. They're simulating a worldview. They're simulating a timeline, and we're all playing along with it. Okay, moving on. Ted Stryker, super chat 20. Thank you very much for putting gas in the think tank. Next month's going to be huge, I think, for the world stage. Joker's coming out, and I want to be here front and center if anything kicks off. Leo Pirate says, are you aware of the biblical concept of type and antitype? It's as if the past Koof spook was a type for the antitype of the mind virus disease X. Now, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm 100% in agreement with what you just said. That I think they gave us the training. They trained us on how to respond to mind viruses by training us on how to respond to the physical virus. After establishing the narrative template for safe spaces and being protected from ideas. So they walked us through this collectively. So we've been collectively initiated into the age of the mind virus, and it's not a coincidence here that the mind virus concept, I mean, it kind of originates with Richard Dawkins and memetics, I guess. Well, memetics really, but the mind virus concept really was, I think, codified by Richard Brody, who wrote Word, Microsoft Word. So bring up Microsoft. You think Bill Gates. You think computer viruses. So now you have Microsoft Word. The guy who created that writes virus of the mind. And he attaches the idea of memes to memetics, to viruses of the mind that you catch passively. That, yeah, you entertain this idea, that idea, and in the back of your mind, these things are attaching and building structures that take over your rational, free-thinking mind at some point. I don't believe that, but they want the public to believe it, and the public will accept it. They'll say, well, it's true for some segments of the population. They used to talk about stochastic violence and copycat killers. The idea that if you just put it out there, someone's going to pick it up and act on it. They want you to accept the premise that you have no agency, and therefore it is in your best interests that they pre-censor the commons, the mental commons, the cyberspace. This is what I mean when I say that they're getting the public to agree, to be compliant, to actually demand censorship. Protect us from Elon Musk. That's what the left is going to say. Protect us from Twitter. And all they need is a justification. And what's that justification? In my opinion, and I've said this since Twitter became X, I said it's going to be right-wing, just like the Turner Diaries, domestic violent extremists working with Russia to get the nuke. And what has just been uncovered in the last week? Russia funding all these right-wing talking heads in the podcastosphere, the Tim Pools, etc., to the tune of $100K a week. So whether or not that's all true or it's just theater, in my opinion, that's what it is. The general public has now seen this. Hey, look, foreign interests are giving these guys money to put forth these ideas that fomented this movement that caused this bad thing to happen. How do we prevent this in the future? Dirk Zink says, Tim, have you noticed our media never presses against all their propaganda? It's all fixed. Yeah, that's one of the first big awakenings I had, is when I realized that the right-wingers will never call out the shooting psyops as fake. And I thought, why wouldn't they? And I saw some prominent people who were, like Project Veritas, James O'Keefe and others who would say, and Mike Cernovich, we're going to bring down CNN. We're going to bring down the fake news. If you remember all that talk. And yet here, served to them on a silver platter, Auto Hoaxers shows them evidence. These things are all evidence that the mass media is simulating events for propaganda purposes. And instead of using their platforms to destroy the opposition media, they go along with it. And then I realized here's why. Because they're complicit in fakery on their own side. Not just the fake swattings of their own homes, which they all do, but a lot of the psyops that benefit the right wing aren't called out by the left, or not, they aren't called out. Left wing doesn't call out right wing psyops and vice versa. So, for example, Islamic terrorist attacks. Those would be things that benefit the right wing, and the left wing will minimize them. And it's just template. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, what's up, caller?
It's Leo Pirate from chat. I just wanted to explain the concept of type and anti-type and why I think the meta scriptures or programmers are kind of copying this concept and a lot of the things you discuss on your show.
Yeah, please do.
It's basically, sure. It's akin to before like an architect makes a building, they make a maquette, make like a small little statue or representation of it, and then you have the reality, right? Or a toy car versus a real car. You can't drive the toy car. And in the way it's described in the Bible, and again, hey, I'm not trying to convert anyone. I totally agree with your stance that we're just analyzing different positions. The Apostle Paul talks about how we actually live on a stage. He says this, we are made a spectacle unto angels and unto men. And he explains how in the Old Testament, when Moses had parted the Red Sea, the Israelites represented a newly baptized Christian, and walking through the Red Sea typified baptism when they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years and experienced trials and disappointments. That's the life of, a Christian when they're following, Christ. And then when they got to Canaan, the promised land, that represents heaven. He describes that in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Now, the programmers, I believe that they have studied, I think they know the Bible better than I do. They think they know better than most people. And they're copying a lot of these concepts. A lot of these films are like their satanic version of God's prophets with symbolism that are fulfilled, not literally, but antitypically, so on a much bigger scale. And
I agree that the templating is a good way of looking at this, and they're able to tap into existing patterns. So if there's this general consensus in the mythology in our background that, there's a story that the wickedness of man at one point triggered the wrath of God to flood everybody. Well, that template is there culturally. It's in the arts. There's references to it. So now you bring up this thing called NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and they say, if you don't cut back on your consumption of fossil fuels, the ocean levels are going to rise and it's going to flood. So you have another NOAA warning us about our wicked ways and how it might trigger Gaia, the new God construct. And the logo of Noah is the dove. The symbol of Noah from the Bible is the dove. So these are deliberate iterations of older stories. And I think it's because they're tapping into our deep mind, our subconscious. They're tapping into archetypes that we passively absorb possibly, or may be fixtures of our traditional cultures.
Like Jungian kind of the hero with 1,000 faces, these archetypes that are built into humanity through time. And you would really point it out with Odysseus and stuff. It's kind of amazing. But the troubling thing for me is when they do that with the Bible, they're actually twisting it. They're giving a wrong interpretation for stuff like the beast, Apollyon, right? For example, in Revelation 9:11 and stuff. It's excellent that on this show, everyone here is analyzing how they're using it. And I've, kind of benefited a lot from watching the previous episode. But I just do want, to stress and emphasize that that's not what it really is. It's like because it's a counterfeit, right? And if you had a counterfeit painting, it's only a counterfeit painting if there's actually a real painting. So just wanted to get that idea. I don't want to interrupt your show
sounds
too
good.
long.
Sounds good, and appreciate you bringing that up. And I think it's a good concept here to take away is syncretism. This is religious syncretism, and they're applying modern parallels with science to replace ancient concepts, and they've done it seamlessly.
Yeah, and I guess final thought before I hang up is that what troubles me the most is if they establish this religious syncretism in a false way, it can lead astray so many people, so-called Christians who honor Christ with their lips, but their hearts are far from him. So there's something to put out there, and yeah, thanks. So I'm gonna hang
All
up.
right.
Bye.
Okay, and my opinion on it too is that I think that atheism today is a misnomer, and that it's a repackaged version of ancient sun worship. And if that sounds extreme, you just have to look at the symbolism and look at it with the lens of syncretism. The obelisk has always been a symbol of sun worship, and sun worship has always been connected to certain symbols, like the snake. And this is like ubiquitous around the world. One of the things that I think has kind of pointed me in this direction was I was already doing comparative symbolism, looking at different religions, checking out different schools of thought on spirituality, mysticism, and magic. And I had come across this one event we talk about often in the whole Babylon working, and then it really hit me reading about Jack Parsons and what he really thought about the rockets going to space, the symbol of the obelisk, and how he turned it into a ritual. Reading Aleister Crowley's Hymn to Pan, I was like, wait here, what we're seeing, because I also studied Scientology. So this is what kind of, I think, made me see all this stuff. One, I was a film studies major, and I was already working with green screen and special effects and 3D animation. And then two, I was already interested in studying these different fields of thought, and I was also hands-on investigating. So I did, in fact, join OTO Thelemic Lodge. I did spend weeks studying the Scientology concepts and reading their books and going to their orgs because I was legitimately looking to understand these things. So when I looked at this this Babylon working, everything made sense. The conjunction of Hollywood with Mystery Babylon and science fiction. And reading what Jack Parsons wrote about this new age, what Crowley wrote about the new aeon, and then L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology concept in the space religion, and then all of it being filtered through movie magic and pageantry, it all made sense. Why would they fake the moon landing? And why would this fakery involve the names of various dead sun gods attached to these various symbolic, ritualistic launches and other events? And the ritualistic nature of it all is what underscores this. And we've gone into this ad nauseum. But the first clue for me was the obelisks. And I have a lot to substantiate this. I put out a book called it was actually a 3-hour talk called Cult of the Obelisk that explains this in detail. And it explains what NASA really is beyond just faking stuff, that it does serve a function. When I call it the Church of NASAtology, I'm not joking, even if it sounds like a funny name. No, NASAtology is quite literally the religion of the masses. It is the concept of heaven that all the other religions of the world bow to. Did they catch the freeway shooter, Mr. Couch? Not yet. Harmon Walker has brought in a bundle here, 20 Blue Wrench Lodge wrenches. Crystal Driscoll, Jimbo Akimbo, Joanne Cat, Psyops Matter, Sync Lloyd, My Third Eye, Dynamo Hum, Jungle Jim, Sleepy Random, Salty Siren, Neat, Chiops, LBB Store, Space Chimps, T-Dog 135, Good Old Fashioned, Nicholas Pitts, Daniel Morris, Rafal, Kozinski, and Grills Trillions have all received a membership gift. Thank you, Harmon. Appreciate that. And there will be a lot more members content here in the near future. I think next month's going to be great. This month is off to a slower start than I wanted because I had to delay the launch of the physical print tabloid. But it's going to happen as a quarterly print, or if my plan B works, it will see print this month and it will be monthly. Lee Dion says, Elon talking about Mars colonization recently again. Yeah, I'm considering this because I think this is all symbolic as well. Colonizing Mars is the realization of an ideal. And it goes back to the Red Star in 1909. The Russian rocket scientists at the time were talking about a communist Mars base, communist moon bases. Well, Red Star talked about this perfect society on Mars. Earthling scientists go out there, they check it out, and look, communism is perfect. It works. So they decide to go back to Earth and sell people on it here. And the purpose of the space program is to sell us on this new ideal. It's kind of interesting how on the right, they don't believe in climate change because they think, oh, that's just communism. Watermelon Marxism, green on the outside, red on the inside. I'm not going to fall for this climate change stuff. But they believe in space travel. And that going to the moon and Mars and forming bases is like the, to them, it will be seen as an achievement brought by freedom and free markets and capitalism, when in reality, it's a stalking horse for advancing what is really just the green movement's ideal. It's just environmentalism has been masquerading with the space program. Same agenda. So they're not going to take you to Mars. They're going to convince you that this is the best way to live. Let's live that way here on Earth. I don't think they're going to ship millions of people to a fake Mars base, but they're going to ship a small test group possibly. Maybe to the moon first. Now, I'm not writing their scripts, but if I was, I would suggest that they load up the Starship. And by the way, there's a Star Trek logo on Mars. There's a Game of Thrones House of Stark logo on Mars. Think about that. House of Stark? Like Tony Stark, Iron Man. Iron Man? Mars is associated with iron, one. House of Stark is the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones. And Elon Musk was the inspiration for Robert Downey Jr. in his role as Iron Man and Tony Stark. It's fascinating when you look at these media connections. But this entertainment and fake science, it's all connected. We live in a Disney universe. Look at Darth Vader's Death Star, and then look at Saturn's moon, Mimas. It's the same thing. Why is that? Well, because Darth Vader is the embodiment, he represents Saturn. But now this Mars-based thing, yeah, obviously it's a huge hoax. They're just going to convince everybody that this is the way to live, and they're going to implement it here on Earth once they've got us to recognize this ideal. But if I was going to be the one to write the scripts, I would have them load up a starship like the Titanic. Like all the richest people, all these famous people get on board. They want to be the first ones to go to Mars. And then on the way to Mars, I want it to get hit by a comet, because it would be like the Titanic in space. And it would sink everyone's expectations for going to Mars. And it would give NASA a few hundred more years to just put off the mission so they can prolong their scam a little longer. Lloyd says, Mars has an occult symbolic meaning. War, energy, iron, more. Yeah, Mars has some associations. It's a red planet, the color red. Color red associated with a lot of these concepts. Iron, the metal. Every planet has a metal association. Like iron associated with Mars, male. Venus is associated with copper, and it's a goddess planet. Jupiter, tin. They're all associated with metals. Saturn is lead, which makes a lot of sense when you get into the symbolism and how they use this stuff. They all have their color associations. So when Elon Musk showed up at that Halloween party in the Devil's Champion, the costume, he bought the Devil's Champion costume from a store. I believe the store is called Abracadabra, which is a term from Aleister Crowley's book. It's the slogan of the new age. It's a phrase that means I create as I speak. But here's Musk wearing his, and this is funny, he's like, we have to defend Christian America and Christianity on Twitter. Meanwhile, his avatar has this, where it has a ram's head. Mars is associated with the ram. So you have the Ram-Mars connection. And then the upside-down cross, the red planet. But then there's something else here. If you look at the tarot card of the Emperor card is the fourth card associated with Mars. Isn't Mars the fourth planet? Here we go. And if you look, the Emperor card is always represented with ram's heads. So he's in a red suit of armor, The fourth card, fourth planet from the sun. He's got the ram's head connection. And this is all, again, correlating to Musk. And the emperor, Pope Elon, Emperor Constantine. I've already called him the Martian Pope. And I say this because in Werner von Braun's book, Mars, A Technical Tale, he describes as the first colony on Mars. The dictators are called the Elon. The dictators of Elon. And he creates on Mars a governmental structure based on the papacy. So in other words, the dictator on Mars, the Elon, is Pope Elon. That's the reason for calling him Pope Elon. I have an article about this. Elon Musk, the next Pope of Mars. And I describe how I arrived at this and the connections between him and Constantine and the concept of space communism and the heavenly realms, outer space, where the gods are. All the planets are named after gods, not a coincidence. And the popes are the ones with the keys to the higher realm. The silver key is the earthly realm, temporal realm. The golden key is the key to heaven. And so the idea that he would have, as far as access to heaven, he is one of the space popes, the space papacy. I made some other connections too. The SpaceX logo has a cross in it, like an upside down cross, like the cross that he's wearing. And I think this is the cross of Constantine turned into a symbolic sword, infused with the spirit of violence, Mars, the war god, and also the Falcon rockets. In the Egyptian pantheon, you have Horus associated with Mars, and he's a falcon-headed god. So the Falcon and the Mars project are inseparable. But one of the things with Constantine, of course, is I think we're getting into this now, because X, the idea of X, it has to do with the role of the consolidation of the new church, the new Bible, the new empire. Constantine said, under this sign, I will conquer, when he has the vision of the glowing cross. And when Musk bought Twitter, he put the X on the building and it was glowing. And he put the slogan out there. It was, blaze your glory. Here's an image of it. And, going further into the iconography here, because I think this is very symbolic as far as worldview formation and the bigger agenda. It's difficult to understate the significance of Musk's character because he plays this oftentimes clownish role. But so the X and the Twitter bird, I've compared to the cross and the dove of Christianity. And I don't think this is an insignificant connection. Again, the dove, a symbol of Noah, dove, a symbol of National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. They're appropriating Old Testament symbols all the time. And it's because it is the same worldview. It's the same structure. It's just a new iteration. The old world order is the new world order. It's just getting a new paint job, dressing it up like sci-fi. Okay, continuing here. Ryler says, that's right, the planets are named after gods. The gods came first. People weren't worshiping planets. They named the planets after the gods. Eccentric View says, Tim, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? I would trust it more. I was really hopeful that it would be helpful, that it would smooth e-commerce, that micropayments, that perhaps the ease of it all without the middleman would facilitate new economies, make it financially lucrative to tell the truth. You wouldn't be censored and penalized for it. I had high expectations, but I think that it has a lot going against it. And I also find it questionable. All the 33s and all the symbolism attached to it, anything crypto, since it's been rolled out, has been too much also associated with right-wing griftosphere and the whole Ponzi scheme mentality, which is very toxic. QAnon, aside from being a religious cult, is a Ponzi scheme. You invest all your social capital into this plan, into this secret information, so that when there's a great awakening, you benefit the most. And you'll find the same people who fell hardcore for Q were targeted by all kinds of crypto scams, NFT scams. I think Trump even got them with a few. But I'm not fully informed enough. But I've definitely I have invested in it, and I used to accept it, but at this point, I had some issue. My Coinbase wallet crashed on me. I changed my phone number on my phone. I've been kind of locked out. But I'm interested to learn more if you have anything you think I should know. Etheric Bliss says, I've always thought Noah's logo portrayed the silhouette of the seagull, but dove seagull. Well, there's a couple of things here. Let's look at the iconography, because like a rocket is not literally an obelisk, but in context, it looks the same. The capstone of the obelisk has a parallel in the capsule of the rocket. So when you're looking at religious symbolism or syncretism, you're looking at the specifically the imagery and how it appears, and it may be simplified, but I wouldn't say this is an oversimplification. Think about the name Noah and Noah. Like, it can't get any clearer. So Noah is synonymous, and it wasn't only the dove. There was a raven as well in the story. But when you look at the symbol of the dove, what does it represent? It brings the olive branch. It means that it's safe to go back. It means the reset is over. So it's also a phoenix symbol. And also within the OTO and the occult, they make great use of the symbol of the dove in all of their... Here's one of the main symbols, actually, is the dove. But when you read deeper, you find that this is just another way of representing the phoenix. Like, these things are more or less interchangeable. So that's why I'm pointing it out that, yeah, it's the symbol of the flood waters receding, but there's even more to it. Here's another one. They have something, Noah has warned us of something called the ark storm. I mean, think about that. And they don't say, oh, by the way, we are taking our ideas from the Bible and scaring people in the same way. We're retelling the same old myth, but they appropriate it all. Ark storm. And then there's this. They have their weather satellite that correlates to the angel warning Noah about the conditions as seen from God's point of view. They've reinvented the myth. It's in all their symbolism. It's in their storytelling. When you look at the modern iteration of it, with climate change being the wrath of Gaia, the role of Noah as the warning, always warning us of floods, yeah, it's a direct one-to-one parallel. It's actually kind of comical. You look at Noah's flood, spelled with two A's, and it's nothing but climate change hype. Flood-based enhanced flood mapping techniques surpasses Noah's accuracy. High tide flooding, U.S. NOAA scientists predict. And in the movie Don't Look Up, the main character is basically Noah, and he's being laughed at, and they stop laughing once the ark doors shut. They stop laughing once the comet hits. But I'm talking, yeah, when you get into so I'm like, this is what I'm saying, is that this is just one example of many examples of an old world view as filtered through the Old Testament, brought back through the modern worldview with modern replacements. And we see this stuff all the time. Let's Go says Bitcoin is the best asymmetric bet you can make. Right. Leo Pirate says Trump recently had a commercial about selling trading cards, and one of them is his Bitcoin president. Yeah, he's pandering last minute. Ryla05 says the global warming people are regurgitating what Christians say basically all the time. You non-believers will pay. Yeah, exactly. So this is an example of the progressive utopianism having a parallel belief system to the traditional believers, and each disbelieves in the other. So the people who believe in Noah's Ark, and there are many today on the far, in the religious right, who believe that Noah's Ark has been found. They build theme parks for Noah's Ark. Well, the people who believe in climate change will laugh at this, and vice versa, because the people who believe in Noah's Ark don't believe in climate change. And then you can look up Al Gore-Leone, or Al Gore. I put Al Gore and it came up crazed sex poodle, because the last time I talked about him, we were talking about how he practically assaulted a masseuse. But Al Gore had described how walking down the streets is like taking pages out of Revelation. And he's constantly doing this. Al Gore in 2017 said, "Every night is a nature hike through the book of Revelations." Now, I know it's Revelation singular. He got it wrong. Gore says climate change is the hike through Revelation. So they've been doing this for a long time. But what I'm saying is that climate change and the biblical flood myth are not real, but rather these are God constructs that the power elite use to disempower everybody else. And look how divisive it is. Hey, if you're on the left, you can chastise the right for causing climate change. And this happens. I listen to liberal podcasters and the other side as well all the time. And there's this one, I think it's and I could probably find this clip. Her name is, I think it's Molly something. She's with the Daily Beast. Totally annoying. Oh, Molly Jong-Fast. And after Maui was hit with those fires, now, of course, conspiracy theorists said it was direct energy weapons. But the left wing said climate change caused the fires in Maui. Well, after that happened, Molly Jong-Fast was on this podcast I was listening to, and she said that she's sorry. She says she's sorry for all of the people who suffered that because of what we did here in America. That Americans caused the fires in Maui. Like, she actually apologized for it. She probably goes to the NBC website Climate Confessionals. Donna South says, "I believe the Bible has already happened and now scriptures are made into script." Yeah, it's absolutely true that the Metascript is embellished with biblical scriptures, as well as stuff from Greek myth, like Agor's Calypso, and other sources as well. I don't have any settled beliefs on religion, and I don't think I will. And just because I don't doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, even though a lot of people will suggest that I am. They'll impugn my motives, but I would ask them, what's their evidence? You know, like, show me evidence that your God likes you more than he likes me. Like, what's your proof? Eccentric View says, "I'm heavily invested into Bitcoin, but I don't think it isn't connected to the people who control us. David Icke always said there'll be a global currency, and I think Bitcoin is it." We says, what? They didn't find the Ark? Yeah, the Ark thing is also tied into the pandemic model that I talked about and Scientology, and the reason why Scientology has their big Sea Org. The Sea Org is the ultimate in quarantine. And quarantine is, and I think this is why, I think this is actually what they did in 2020. Quarantine is like Lent, and these things kind of overlapped, if you recall. Quarantining is a purification from the non-believers. And the bunker, like the doomsday bunker, is always this basically a quarantine from the people who don't believe the world's going to end. You know, but the Ark itself was a quarantine against the sinners and the wrath of God. And doomsday bunkers are similar. And this is a big topic. You look at Fallout, it's all about doomsday bunkers. I have this theory, I can't prove it, that Elon Musk is selling like black market tickets to Mars. Like, in other words, a lot of these billionaires know that something bad's going to happen. So they have their bunkers, but they're probably told by Musk, "Hey, is there any way I can guarantee that my family has a safe exit from this doomed planet?" And I'm pretty sure he's selling tickets to a bunch of people on the slide under the table. And who would stop him? If they're that brainwashed, why wouldn't you anyway? Estevan says David Icke was... Yeah, David Icke is interesting for a few reasons. However, he's also a true believer in alt media. And he's been trying to distance himself from other alt media types with good reason. He distanced himself from Andrew Tate, Alex Jones, and others by defining himself as the alternate. That he's not the mainstream alternate media. But that doesn't go far enough because he's still mediated. You see, we're not media. We're actually off-world stage. We're media analysts, but they're actually the media, and they have a perspective that takes for granted the world view, the model, as the terrain. They think the model is the terrain. They live in the simulation because there is a simulation. But the simulation is the mental construct that the consensus accepts as the real thing. It's the wool pulled over your eyes. It's the digital veil. It's a hoodwink. And hoodwink refers to the sack of wool, the wool sack that they put over your head when you're brought into a cult, like you're initiated. You can't see which way you're going, so that you're brought to the secret location, so you can't tell anybody how to find it. But when you're shown the light, they take the hood off. But symbolically, it represents that those in the light have information that those outside don't. And they refer to those outside the temple as the profane, wandering in the darkness, that they're hoodwinked. So if you haven't been initiated into how fake news is and who runs this place and how, if you haven't been made aware of the Psywar, you are hoodwinked. No amount of red pills is going to cure that. Eccentric View says, I started following David Icke in 2004. Yeah, he's a good storyteller, but again, the only thing I like of his is his tales from the time loop. Everything else is just QAnon garbage. He was talking about child trafficking, tens of thousands of kids disappearing every day from Walmarts and being fed to the Clintons. He was talking about this stuff like 20 years ago. I think the first chapter in his book, Children of the Matrix, is like, where have all the children gone? 300,000 kids disappear every minute. Like, it's these ridiculous figures. And you read it, and like, wow, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah, this stuff is all true. And the Queen Mum, the Queen of England, is a 12-foot tall reptilian, but you don't see it until they start killing kids in front of her, and then she shapeshifts. Now, I don't know if he came up with the stuff on his own, or if he was stalked by like government operatives who fed him a lot of bad eyewitness testimony, faulty eyewitness testimony, and that happens. He could be a victim of Mirage Men, like the documentary. It's about this conspiracy theorist here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, next to Kirtland Air Force Base, who started writing about craft that he would see. And in order to discredit him in case he should see anything classified, they sent conspiracy theorists into his life. They sent people into his life to say, hey, I saw this, and I got these government docs. There's aliens from Venus. They're abducting us and probing us, and they have a deep underground military base in Dulce. And he was given all this information, and he started the whole UFO cult as far as conventions of alien believers with all their stories of abductions and underground bases. That was all started by the Air Force here. That's admitted. That's the truth. The Air Force created UFO mythology that people believe in like a religion. And they created it for the express purpose of creating a compatible belief system that has angels and salvation and transcendence for the atheists. Aliens are angels for atheists. Gaia, the globe, is a god for atheists. That's a construct. It's the big picture construct. But similarly, I would not be surprised if David Icke was just a run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist and they sent people in to tell him, hey, I keep seeing reptiles everywhere. Because if you follow his books, he's not saying, yeah, I saw a bunch of reptilians. He's like, I ran into this person who told me this, and this person told me that. And this person said the president of Mexico turned into a giant iguana and molested her. And he has all these really salacious, disturbing stories about satanic sacrifices involving sadistic, disgusting things. But he got it all secondhand. Maybe he was just fooled. Because a few books later, he changed it to shadow people. He backed off the reptilians. And then the ADL went after him and scrapped all his books in Canada, and he lost distribution because they said, oh, he's just taking old anti-Semitic conspiracies and replacing one group with reptilians. which is sort of offensive in a way to them. But it's genius from a marketing perspective, because here you take something that's hateful and based on hating people because their ethnicity, and now you're replacing it with this science fiction paradigm. Like maybe we've been taken over by aliens from Sirius. So he kind of made the conspiracy theory realm fun, but it's firmly attached to science fiction. And it ultimately leads to reinforcing the dominant paradigm, which is why David Icke could never go against NASA. He's just going to say NASA's covering stuff up. But I do like his theory about tales from the time loop. I think it may have some explanatory value as far as perception and co-creation as concepts. And one thing I do give him credit for is he does seem to have genuine synchronicities. He does seem many times to be very genuine. So people say he's a gatekeeper, he's a shill. Possibly. One thing too that works in his favor is he was in the Green Party, so he's an insider in some ways. He could just be insulated. Like maybe he doesn't know enough to auto-hoax yet. But at this point in 2024, if you're not auto-hoaxing, you're just not paying attention. In 2024, if you're not auto-hoaxing, you're either a paid agent, a dupe, or you're just not paying attention. There's no other alternative. And who are you going to follow? Somebody who can't see their way through the Matrix, even though they wrote a book about the Matrix? Or maybe someone who just got fooled and doesn't know. And it's like, well, if he doesn't know by now. But that's why none of us here are followers. Ryler says he was a newscaster, lots of intelligence agents in news media. Water Walking Jesus says, do you think Mars is part of Universal Studios? I have a few theories about the Mars base and how they're going to pull it off. In fact, I need to watch the new Blade Runner. No, not Blade Runner. Total Recall. Because in Total Recall, they go to Mars. But I was told that in the new Total Recall, they go through an underground tunnel to Australia. And I've been thinking that they introduced... Why do you think Elon Musk has Hyperloop? How does that make any sense? Why would Musk have Hyperloop? Well, Hyperloop ties into wormholes, ties into accelerated space travel. So now instead of taking a long trip to Mars, you're going to go and it's going to take you 8 hours because you're taking a wormhole. Or you can go to any one of these destinations. We have the TRAPPIST system of exoplanets. Just select one, get in this little ship, and going through the Hyperloop would feel like you're going to space. So they could fake space travel and send you to some deep underground military base dressed up like this or that planet, like Disneyland. And I brought up Disney, Walt Disney, and Werner von Braun. And if you think about it, Disney, the Disney universe, what is Disneyland? It's a closed system. It's a Truman Show with a theme. What is the difference? We're talking about theme parks, a Mars theme park, a moon theme park. It would be easy. Although I don't think they're going to fake it for civilians. They're going to fake it for actors who will then send or broadcast it for people here who believe that these are actually Martians now. But I don't think they can send people to Mars until they get rid of all flat Earth content on the internet. They have to get rid of all doubt that NASA is capable of performing these miracles. Water Walking says, remember the fat lady mask Arnold wears to try to sneak into Mars in Total Recall? Yeah, I have to watch it again because I like a lot of these organic synthetic effects, like prosthetics, more than the CGI stuff. There was this interesting article and interview by with Douglas Trumbull, who did the special effects for Space Odyssey 2001. And he said that his special effects from 50 years ago aged better than what's being produced today because they're constantly having new iterations and better CGI effects. Whereas using miniatures, scale models, you create these effects that are just realistic. They just look real. And that doesn't degrade over time. And it is an interesting observation considering how the ISS year by year has depreciated. The special effects look worse with every passing year because they can't keep up. And they introduced some augmented virtual reality elements badly, with many bloopers, microphones going through necks, cords going through wrists, heads going through ceilings. I mean, they've introduced so many effects, like people grabbing objects at the wrong time and putting invisible objects on the shelf. They haven't really improved. And they're looking worse as every year goes by. So special effects is truly the limiting factor on when we go to Mars. So they got to get rid of those of us who are visually literate. They want to drown us out with deepfakes. They want to make it so that nobody can claim authoritatively that something is fake or real. We will be entirely reliant on the government media to designate it. The desert of the designated real. Sink Lloyd says, wouldn't be surprised to find Ike is in the Black Eye Club. Yeah, he could be a reptile. N.A. Literalist said, Red, fight the Flat Earth, and Cyman Dan first to Mars. Oh, you know what? Mick Toon said he would crowdfund me to go to Antarctica. So I'm thinking, I'll do it. I'll set up a crowdfund for me to go to Antarctica under one condition. Because he said he's going to pay $100 into it. If he sets up a crowdfund for him to go to Mars, and I'll put that $100 back into his pocket. I will crowdfund McToon to go to Mars. Any of these guys. Like, please, go. Get it, and then you can go to Mars, you can wave back and say, I told you so. I think it's funny. I think the whole thing's just a comic. It's a joke. It's such a joke. And we know it's a joke because there are inside jokes that you wouldn't get if you weren't apprised of how fake it all is. By the way, this was posted yesterday, and I don't know what the significance of it is. I didn't know until, like, Mary, Virgin Mary, was born on September 8th. Happy birthday, Mary, tweeted Donald Trump. Now, I think this is noteworthy for the reason that we're in Virgo. So Virgo, Virgin Mary, there's that connection. And then last week over Labor Day, there was the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception that burned. So again, Immaculate Conception means that God was there was no fornication. It was just God implanted the baby. So Immaculate Conception that burns. And I thought that's interesting because it's kind of a Virgo reference. And then I remembered on the 2019 Labor Day, there was a boat called Conception with 33 people on it that burned. And this is right after the 33rd Burning Man, where they found a dead 33-year-old in Black Rock City, Nevada. But anyway, the significance here, the conception, Immaculate Conception, and then, of course, the Virgin Mary being given a happy birthday wish by the president. That's weird. And then this, Marissa Kendra posted, 2 years ago today, Queen Elizabeth passed. This morning, Donald Trump posted an acknowledgement of Virgin Mary's birthday. So what's the connection here? Queen's death day, Virgin Mary's birthday, Immaculate Conception burning, Conception burning, all under Virgo. May mean something. Here's something else that may mean something. The Atlantic is prescient, psychic at times. Probably more psychic than The Economist when it comes to its cover art for predicting the future. Here's the New Atlantic coming out for October. It has Trump on his way to the Capitol with a captive elephant in his carriage. What does this mean? Leo Pirate says, the art of practical special effects and automata and animatronics is sadly dead. No, actually, I have something here that might make you happy to hear. The hyper-realistic training dolls, training dummies that they use for EMTs, for the military, they sent a lot of these to Ukraine for some reason. Like, they're at war. Why do you need hyper-realistic surgical training dolls? The ones they have today, these simulation dolls, bleed They breathe, they moan, they cry, and you can do surgery on them. So the hyper realistic training dolls are far more realistic than they've ever been. When I was reclassed into 92 Mike, I was in Fort Lee, Virginia, and there was a warehouse full of these things. And we trained by moving them around, by lugging these things around, learning how to move these dummies around. Here's one. Realistic dummy was used for the C-19. We saw a lot of these on TV, actually. But they have dolls that bleed, that cry, that breathe. So they're definitely going to use it. They're making these things so realistic that they'll fool the camera. And if they fool the camera, it fools Normieville and most of Trutherville. Seek Lloyd says, have you seen the muscles on Miss Alex Jones? She's Olympian. No, but I remember the story about how she beat him over the head with a bottle of No More Tears. And he had to call the cops. And didn't she also have like a 5-pound paperweight that she threw at his head? Anyway, you could probably find those stories. James Earl Jones dies at 93. Field of Dreams, Darth Vader, Sandlot. People die. Celebrities die. Is it always connected? Is it always timed symbolically? I think so. And here's why. And I'm not saying with his case, I don't know. But if you're participating in PSYOPs, your birthday likely has some significance because your character's fake. Take, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse, Greta Thunberg. Both of them hatched, taken out of the vat or whatever, on 1/3/2003. These two brats, symbolic of the worst that the left and the right at its fringes have to offer, are quite literally born on the same day. That's not coincidental. So it wouldn't surprise me if, I'm let's say you're an aged actor and you've been a part of this rigged reality. Yeah, you might die at any time, but your official death date might have some special significance. So what is the significance here? I'm not sure, but I'm not going to say it's a nothing burger. Ryler 05, those were invented a long time ago. And a literalist said the Russians are killing the dolls. Yeah, they've been using dummies for a long time. Dummy tanks, dummy planes, dummy rocket launchers, dummy missiles, simulated events, propaganda, fake events, faking the casualties, faking the reports. This has gone on for a long time. Deep faking is not new. We are already in a deep faked reality. Here's one final point. Deep fakery isn't new, and media wasn't hijacked. The power elite have always kept us in a simulation. Right now, they've consolidated all of the previous simulations and worldviews into one big sim. The globe. The globe model, shape is the least of it. The model itself, the closed system, the total explanation, the big picture itself, that to me is the great accomplishment of the power elite, because they have taken all these competing factions with their different versions of how best to live. They all have their ideas of heaven, for example, their own gods. Well, they all kneel to outer space. They all kneel to the miracles. They're all basically soy jacking, pointing at rockets going to space. They've all been fooled. They all worship the burning obelisk. Messianic Charlatan said Darth Vader just died. See, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. There has to be some bigger significance. Robert De Niro losing his head at the Trump rally. No, sorry, at the Trump courthouse. Yeah, that tied in multiple predictive programming roles for the upcoming headshot, just in time. Multiple. His most recent role was in Joker, where he gets shot in the head. But there were multiple roles where Robert De Niro is preparing us for the assassination attempt. Specifically his Joker role, based on his role as Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, which literally inspired the shooting of Reagan by Hinkle. And remember, Rosie O'Donnell called the fake Trump shooting hinky. Interesting tie-in. But my point is that the announcement of his death date isn't just this man, this actor, but it's going to bring in all the different roles into the picture. So they're all in play. So what is the significance of Darth Vader dying? Is a valid question here. Chris Diamond says, is this live? It's either live or you caught a replay. And a whole lot of weird coincidences. We barely got through the notes. I hope we didn't get too sidetracked. I'm not dodging. I'm just trying to set the stage here. That for us to stay objective, we have to stay outside of identity politics and religion. And that's not censorship because there's plenty of that out there. We don't need to be another carbon copy. We don't need to be an imitator. We don't need to regurgitate what other people are saying. Grandpa of accused Georgia shooter says the teen's evil father should get the death penalty for provoking the massacre. Evil father, Darth Vader, Dark Father. Maybe a loose connection. We talked about I kind of just brought this up. Super cringe video of RFK twerking on camera or twitching. He got boosted. Okay, continuing to my notes, I want to see what we can catch up on. Before we go tonight, we have about 5 or 10 more minutes. Irrational Exuberance had posted yesterday, in this day and age with AI, deepfakes, edited posts, clickbait, etc., why would you not be an auto hoaxer? Good question. Why would you not be an auto hoaxer? What's your excuse?
A lot of people don't know that the Kamala Harris campaign, formerly the Biden campaign, is being run by Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg and a whole bunch of people like that. And that was never really out there in the public, but it is.
What? I didn't know about this. Steven Spielberg is interesting. I have to look back at his work. We found a lot there, Metascript-wise, but he took over for AI, which was Kubrick's project. So there's this Spielberg-Kubrick overlap. So Metascript-wise, I think we have to look at Spielberg a bit more.
It is. And I feel like we're watching Wag the Dog by the same people who made Wag the Dog in real time. That is what it feels like to me. And everything is being constructed out of a Hollywood writer's room. They're reading it out loud. They're sitting around a table. They're editing. Like, I really do feel like this is a full-on Wag the Dog.
She said Wag the Dog simulation or Truman Show. Or Situation or Truman Show. So what they're talking about is news bending. So in Wag the Dog, they're doing PR stunts to influence the news. So what's the difference between doing a PR stunt once in a while or doing it as the standard operating procedure all the time? We are so saturated with PR stunts. And what is a PR stunt but a prefabricated scene that they're inserting into the historic narrative? So hoax doesn't do it credit. You can't just say, oh, it's a hoax. It's a psyop. No, it's a psychological war zone. We're in the theater of psywar, but these are not anomalies. So here she is having this epiphany about how you can't trust anything because everything is being directed by Hollywood. It's like in 2017, I said, there is no meaningful distinction between Hollywood and the news. Like, it's good that they're figuring this out. It's 7 years too late, and it's way worse than they have even touched on here.
Situation or Truman Show, whichever, but we're watching a creation of Hollywood, in my opinion.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it is accurate to say, though, that what we're seeing, and it's not even, it's the creation of Hollywood. It's that Hollywood is, and the news media are inextricably intertwined. It's not like you can get rid of Hollywood's influence because they're too influential in the media. No, Hollywood is government. Media is government. What they promote worldview-wise through the educational institutions all reinforces this. Like I use the term, or the acronym GAME program. Government, academia, media, entertainment. You have to look at these things as a monolithic, unified whole. And I think that's the main symbol of the monolith itself. I put some notes here really quick. I want to go through this because we're talking about confusion. For example, this headline, The information wars are about to get worse, Yuval Harari argues, the author of Sapiens. The information wars are going to get worse. This guy understates it. He's the one who calls us hackable animals. No, we're already in the simulation. And it's under the control of a worldview monopoly. Okay, I put down this note here about confusion. So I don't look at shooting events like the other day, the shooting of the week. I don't look at these things as maybe it's real, maybe it's fake. Maybe it's a mix of some died, some didn't. And it's because I know the function of government-controlled media, and any confusion as to whether real people died at a simulated event would only arise from a misunderstanding about what a psyop is. So a psychological operation is a PR stunt. It's a reality TV show episode. It's a staged simulation for propaganda purposes. So the truthers who are still caught up with, it's real, people died, they're caught up in the magic show. And they have yet to separate the actual from the illusory. And for too long, truthers have accepted confusion as a normal state. Like, I'm just asking questions. I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. And they wear confusion like it's a badge of honor. Like, hey, my confusion, my questions that I'm just prompting you with here, just show that I'm open-minded, that I'm a real thinker. No, real skepticism, real skeptics right now shouldn't be confused. You should be arriving at conclusions. The answers are there. And that's why I pointed out it's 2024. If you're not auto-hoaxing by now, you're following, perhaps not even paying attention. But you're following people who are purposefully keeping you 15 years behind the curve here. This is the cutting fringe. Maggart4822 says fake until proven real. Yeah, fake until proven real, 100%. And let's just say something is real. Well, they can just show us. It's not too high a bar to ask the media to provide facts to back their claims. But their standard operating procedure for the MSM involves emotional appeals. That's why they use these actors on the screen. They use various logical fallacies all the time, loaded questions, and even if they're being completely honest, the person who's reading the teleprompter is completely honest, and maybe they're telling the truth at that moment, it doesn't change the fact that they are standing upon an edifice of lies, and that their perspective comes from a world view, a built-in set of parameters, and that matters. It's the lie world order, and there has to be some nuance when you're talking about, liars. Witting liars, unwitting liars, naive liars. There are various reasons for it. Those who lie to themselves. Then you have sleight of hand, magic tricks, sleight of mind, logical fallacies. There are so many different ways that people arrive at wrong answers. And mostly it stems from this ubiquitous flaw. And I think this is a philosophical crisis in our collective epistemology, where if it's on the screen, it's assumed to be real, and people aren't making distinctions. There's this almost like osmosis. Everything you don't watch, you just kind of assume it happened. If it didn't happen, it would have been debunked. And that's a major blind spot, that the media is somehow self-correcting, that it's debunking its own misstatements. No, it's not. It's not reporting, it's producing a lot of the stories. But they produce enough stories, they report on enough stories, and they do enough real coverage to give them cover. But it's good to think about it as a liar. The best liars lie strategically when they can get away with it, when they have your trust. And to have your trust, they have to tell you the truth, often enough. If they lied with every breath, they would be psychopaths. You wouldn't trust them. They would be incoherent. And there's one other flaw that pegs the truther, and it's assuming it's real until it's proven fake. And as the commenter a moment ago said, you have to go with fake until proven real. And why? Because you don't have enough evidence at face value to say it's real. You don't have enough evidence. And so if you preemptively say it's real, you've given them a small benefit of the doubt. You have to go with it. You have to really invert. It's not even inversion. It's inversion. It was an inversion for them to put the burden of proof on you, that you have to prove them wrong. So it's actually a reversion to make them accountable for their claims. Infinite Plane Radio.
Accountable.
Hey, what's up, caller? Last caller of the night. Pippi says, attention is currency. True. Hey, what's up, caller? I think you've got a speaker on in the background. Okay. All right, we lost that one. Gremlins. Well, that person was caught in an echo chamber. MoodyBug20 says, I can't believe anyone would believe any of this crap is real. Manifestos. What manifesto would leave a diary? Or yeah, that's standard. We now consider any manifesto is a prop. It's a movie prop. Okay, let's try one more time. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay? Okay, we may not be getting through.
My thing is in the way here.
Okay,
So,
got you now. What's up, caller? What topic?
Hello?
Yeah. What topic here tonight has piqued your interest?
well, this damn thing.
Which damn thing?
Okay, so let's do this.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get this thing off the screen. So for some
Well,
reason,
I can hear you.
I hate these fucking phones, man. They don't work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. I can't disagree there.
Let's see. What can I do?
It's probably planned obsolescence. Like, I have nonstop issues with cards all day long, and I think
It
they want to
seems as though
condition us.
you're talking to me.
Yeah. Okay. I think that caller's kind of lost the moment. Planned obsolescence. They want to get you to not want to use credit cards at some point, physical cards. They want to get you to move into wearables and then implants, I think, eventually. And they're doing it, I believe, by purposefully degrading these things. Okay, yeah, caller, if you want to try again tomorrow, I have to run. Appreciate all the comments. It's been a very interesting chat. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I only brought up the stuff about the trolls with their agendas to point out that this is agenda free. And, you know, I think there's like agenda free radio and agenda free channels all the time. And you're not agenda free if you're inadvertently, unwittingly an agent for controlled opposition counter narratives. That's like that's the last thing from agenda free. But yes, we'll continue this conversation tomorrow. I was hoping to get through a few more of my notes. I think we talked about this. Okay, the mother of the shooting suspect claims that she warned the school. The grandfather said the father was evil. So there have been a few developments there. The other thing I wanted to get into was the fall of Donnie Darkened and what it says about how rigged the Trutherville is. And I called this out. He blocked me months ago when I said this live. I said Donnie Darkened blocked me today because I accused him of using ChatGPT for his sermons, that he's just putting Bible babble and Trump Antichrist stuff into AI and spewing out stuff. And it turns out it wasn't just me. Others had the same suspicion that Donnie Darko's little rants, his sermons, were AI ChatGPT created. He copied and pasted AI words onto his page and would add a few sentences. And I recognize this because I use Claude AI, and I recognize that it can do some work, it can do some lifting, it can take the amount of time to create a big project and reduce it, but it can't replace a human writer. Not yet, anyway. But if you're just skimming over stuff, you might not notice, but a lot of us did notice, and we were vindicated. Someone tested it, they found out. So some guy was using AI to grift Bible believers into thinking he had insights about the end of the world and Trump. And he was making a lot of money, getting a lot of hits, and all of his posts were, according to the analysis, between 80 and 96% ChatGPT generated. And they used zero GPT to test it. So this guy's a huge fraudster. It's basically plagiarism. But I want to point out that his millions of followers and Tim Pool's audience, they all fed this thing. They all fell into it. And look how ironic it is. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. So he quotes on here, be vigilant, because there's liars out there taking advantage of you. And he's one of them. That's why I don't trust anybody with the name truth in their username. Sorry, if you have truth in your username, there's a 99% chance that you're a propaganda mule for the deep state, for controlled opposition, alt media. And what's worse, Donnie Darkin using ChatGPT to sell people to grift off of this new end times eschatology nonsense, or the people falling for it. The people falling for it are examples of what I say when people have mind aids. They lost their critical thinking. I didn't fall for it, not for 1 second. From the very beginning, I said, I'm not trusting this guy because it's an anonymous avatar. Turns out, yeah, he's a propagandist, a pro-Trump propagandist at that, LARPing as some kind of anti-Trump alarmist. All right, this is Autohoaxology by Symbia. Thanks for joining. We'll continue this talk tomorrow.
I don't believe in chemtrails. I don't live in Truthville. Just because you saw it on the screen doesn't make it real. I don't take the red pill. I don't take the blue pill. I just choose to follow my dreams. Autohoax and chill. I stepped off the world stage and I moved away from all the fake outrage and the hearsay. And I don't give the time of day to those that naysay, because they got a backhand of the mind age. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading out of hoaxology, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading out of hoaxology. Nothing can bother me, out of hoaxology. Walk with the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin', reading out of hoaxology, rejecting all the expectations of the auto-believer, to become a new creation on the raft of receiver. Standing on the sword of truth, I stab the backs of deceivers, demanding burdens further proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading auto-hoaxology, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading auto-hoaxology. Nothing can bother me, auto-hoaxology. Walk with the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin', reading auto-hoaxology, suspending all the judgment, you won't get a reaction. Won't defend it, I won't budge until I get all the facts in. I won't argue with the bots about the next current thing, crying over the fake bodies like a